Help! My slope is a fraction. How do I get the y-intercept? This is a statement that I've heard many times in class. Students have no problem calculating the slope, no problem finding the y-intercept as long as the slope is an integer value. So let's go through a couple of examples, and I'm going to show you two different ways that you can find the y-intercept if the slope is a fraction, and hopefully one will make sense and then you'll be pros. So in the question it says the slope of a line has a rise of 1 and a run of 3. So we know our m is 1 over 3. Determine the equation of a line, so that's our next cue. So we're going to write y equals mx plus b. If it passes through the point -1, -1. Giving us that point, we have a value for x and a value for y, which we need. So now I'm going to substitute in. So y is -1 equals 1/3 multiplied by -1 plus b. When we have this -1 here, we always have a denominator of 1, even though it's not written. It's super important that you do that. The other thing that's really important with fractions is write it so it's one on top of the other. Don't use the slash because it creates issues when you're trying to show the multiplication of the fractions. So we have -1. We're going to multiply our numerator with numerator. We get -1. The denominator is going to stay as 3 plus 1. Now we're back to solving equations. How do we isolate b? We want to get b by itself. So right now there's a -1/3. That means we're subtracting 1/3. The opposite of subtracting 1/3 is adding 1/3. So I'm going to have -1 plus 1 over 3 equals b. Now we're really happy because we got the b by itself, but we still have to clean up that -1 plus 1 over 3. Common denominator is our next step. So common denominator between 1 and 3 is 3. So we get -3 over 3 plus 1 over 3 equals b. So we do our integer addition here with the numerator since we have -3 plus 1. So -2 over 3 equals b. There, we have everything we need for our equation. So our final therefore statement, y equals 1 over 3x minus 2 over 3. So that's, in my opinion, the easiest way of doing it. It's the less work, and once you wrap your head around it, you have fewer mistakes. Just pay attention to that whole positive negative piece. I'm going to do one more example. This time we have 2 points. So to determine the equation of a line, our purpose is the same. We still want to get that y equals mx plus b, but the info is delivered differently. This time, instead of giving you the slope outright, we need to calculate it. So we're going to start with our formula, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Those numbers are subscripts. I noticed yesterday in class that some of you were writing them up top, which means something completely different. It means that they are exponents. So please don't do that. I don't want you to make the error of applying exponent rules when it doesn't apply here. All right, so I've arbitrarily chosen to label my points as I just did. So that's meaning 6 is my y2, minus is part of the formula, and then I have -1 for y1. My denominator is going to be -11, subtract -8. So now when we perform that operation, 6, when I have a negative and a negative immediately adjacent, we end up adding. Same thing in the denominator. So 6 plus 1 is 7, -11 plus 8 is -3. All right, so now this is another little spot where if you don't move the negative to the numerator, I see all kinds of mistakes. So always, 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 always move that negative to the numerator before you start figuring out what your equation is. And the reason why we do that is because the way we multiply our fractions. If there's a negative and a negative, make sure you recognize a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay, so now we're at the point where we can substitute into our equation. So y equals negative 7 over 3x plus b. I have two different values for x and y here, and it's up to me which one I would pick. I would pick the negative 8, negative 1 because the numbers are a little bit smaller, but that's me. In the end, it doesn't matter. We went through the little exercise in class where each side of the room picked a different point and everyone got the same answer. So negative 1 is y, negative 7 over 3 multiplied by negative 8 plus b. Once again, I'm going to make that denominator of 1 obvious. So my next step is do my multiplication. So I have negative 7 multiplied by negative 8, which is going to be positive 56 over 3 plus b. Now, a lot of you like getting the common denominator for everything. So if you're going to do that, that's fine. We're just going to work through that right now. So if I get the common denominator for negative 1 over 1, I'm left with negative 3 over 3. The 56 over 3 doesn't need to change. And then this is where the mistake happens. Students forget to include the b in this process. But if you're getting a common denominator for all of your terms, every term needs to have that. So now that I've done that, we are at the point where we can multiply everything by 3. The whole purpose of our denominator. So we're left with negative 3 equals 56 plus 3b. I'm going to subtract 56 from both sides. So we end up with negative 59 equals 3b. Final step, divide by both sides by 3. So I know that negative 59 over 3 equals b. So this one is a little bit more work, but if it makes more sense to you because it links it back to how you were finding the value of a variable in Unit 2, that's fine. It doesn't really matter as long as you're comfortable with one of these steps. So my final job to get that final answer, slope is negative 7 over 3x plus, except I don't need a plus because the slope is, the y-intercept, sorry, is actually a negative. So I'm going to subtract that. All right, so that's how we deal with fractions.